What is up, guys? This is Simon from First Card Gaming. Today I'm going to be commentating a mirror match of Adventurer Despia from the OCG. This is from a channel that does OCG match highlights called Next Play. They gave me permission to dub over this video, so I'm going to be doing that today. Sorry I haven't uploaded a video in quite a while. I've been pretty busy in real life, and I also went to a regional last weekend. I unfortunately did not top, but it was my first paper event in, I think, 2.5 years, so it's been pretty fun getting back into the game. I want to address a couple discussion points before I get started with the commentary. Despia has been out now for about a week and a half, and we've seen some results already, and it's about what I expected. It's definitely a strong deck, but it's not instantly like the level of rep that it was in the OCG. It's like people are kind of debating whether this or Adventurer Prank is better, and it's definitely gotten some results, but it's not like tier 0 or anything, nowhere close to it. So I think that's about what I expected. There's been a lot of experimentation in TCG lists, which is also something I said was probably going to happen. So we have a lot more people trying out patchwork over here than we do in the OCG. And we have people playing around with multiple Albaz. If you've seen Asala's list from Luxury, they're playing Fairy Tale Snow in this deck, which I think is pretty cool. Not really sure how good it is yet, but I think definitely as, the lists get more optimized, this is kind of a testing period. There's a lot of regionals before YC's Hartford in the end of May, and I think we're going to see a lot of kind of just testing and playing around before that. We also have the 2 South American YCSs happening, I think, right now, so we'll definitely see how the lists get more streamlined as we get closer to YCS season. But yeah, I've seen some regional reports, and there's been a lot of Adventurer Despia topping, which I think is probably the best version, which is not really that unexpected considering that we have the full power engine here. The mirror match is quite hard. Other matches are not as complicated, I don't think, but the mirror match has a lot of interesting interactions and things you have to remind yourself about. So I'm going to be going over this replay as kind of a way to illustrate some of the things you do in the mirror. There's a lot of things you can learn from just watching the mirror match, and I think this is a good match because the players don't play perfectly. They actually make quite a few mistakes, and so it's a good learning opportunity. After this, I do plan on uploading another video about a mirror match that I played on Dueling Book with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago as more of a TCG applicable example, because the OCG has Maxi, and you're going to see that Max is actually pretty important in a lot of these matches, so it's not really going to be an exact comparison because their format is different from ours, but I do think you can still learn a lot from this. So without further ado, let's just jump in. So like I said, this is from a YouTube channel called Next Play. I will link this original video in the description if you want to see it. The commentary is in Japanese, so I'm going to try my best to kind of talk about what's going on myself. This is an example deck list of what I think one or maybe both of the players is playing. It's, I think, a pretty standard Adventurer Despia list. They only have 2 Right and 2 Enchanters at the time this match was played. So apart from that, I think everything is pretty standard. The extra deck is very streamlined toward a kind of pure build. You'll see 3 Albion here. There's 2 Chimera, 2 Draco Stapelia. There's no tech cards. Obviously DPE was banned at this point in the OCG, and so you don't see that in here at all. Let's fast forward to the actual gameplay. So the player on the right, player B, is going to go first here. He's going to play Branded Fusion, and it's going to get ashed, and he is going to pass his turn, which is unfortunate, but this is kind of just what happens when you don't draw any protection. This is one of the reasons Adventurer is played, and you'll see this with even other decks in the format, like Adventurer Prank. They'll get ashed and they'll pass. So player A is going to start off with opening. If you look at his hand on the upper left corner here, you'll actually notice that he has a Right of Aramis in his hand, and he chooses to opening first. So this is an interesting choice. I don't know if this is correct necessarily, but it shows that he values this Right over the Aliber, and if you look at his hand again in a couple seconds, you'll see a Maxi. So my theory is that he really wanted to prioritize the Maxi and just push for 4,000 damage here with the Adventurer engine. And just have the negate. So he discards a Bell. So his last card in hand is Max. He's going to summon Griffin Rider. He's going to add Draco back. So he could have done Right first and then guaranteed a Branded Fusion, which I think is usually better. I don't necessarily agree with going for Adventurer here, but this is what he went to go for. We're going to go back to player B. He's going to summon Aliber, and this is going to get Griffin negated, which is, again, I'm not positive if you do this, but there's no really good time to do this. You'll notice that Branded Fusion is activate once per turn, so I'm going to pause here. If he had negated the Branded Fusion instead and Aliber had grabbed another one, then he would have just been able to activate a second Branded Fusion in the same turn, because this is not use once per turn, this is activate once per turn. So really, shotgunning the Griffin on the Aliber is probably the only time you're going to be able to use it here. So player A is going to chain Max here, and this resolves, fortunately. If player B had Ash Blossom here, then this would have been pretty major. But the max resolves, and now A is going to get a couple draws off of this Despia combo. And Despia doesn't give that many draws off max. It's like 2 draws here, but it's still a decent swing in momentum. It's going to go Lubellion, sending Tragedy. He's going to pitch another Tragedy in hand, so player B not opening the best here. No Adventure Engine, opening a brick. Not super fortunate. But he's going to get his engine online first. He's going to Lubellion for a Mirror Jade. We're going to get another draw for player A. You'll notice Called by the Grave in player A's hand. This is going to be crucial in a couple moments here. So A's hand is Dracoback, Called by, and I think a Branded Fusion. He's going to attack the Adventure token with Mirror Jade, and then he's going to banish the Aliber in the battle phase to play around Valor. Sending Albion to Grave, and then in the end phase he's going to grab, I believe, a Branded in red off of the Albion. So let's just fast forward through that. And then I think B's hand is Valor and Ad Libitum. So he's going to set the Branded in red. Pass play. During player A's, I believe, draw phase, player B is going to instantly Branded in red, and he's going to do this to clear the journey, and or the Fateful Adventure, excuse me. And player A is going to chain Cold by here, so I'm going to pause again. So I think the reason player B did this in draw phase is because he knows that A has Dracoback, and so he just wants to cut off access to right, because the Dracoback is going to out this Mirror Jade if he can get the right token online. And so I think what he's going for is, there's not a good time to do this otherwise. If you wait for the journey to activate and then summon the token off the right, you can maybe banish or destroy the token with your Chimera, but then you risk, maybe what if their Griffin Rider hits the field, and then you have a lot of trouble. So instead, B just opts to shotgun the Branded in red to get his 2 draws and to permanently take out this Fateful Adventure in the draw phase, which I think is reasonable. But player A has a Called by for Tragedy, and this is huge. This is such a massive swing because the Tragedy is going to get banished, and then the Branded in red is going to not resolve, or resolve without effect rather, and that's going to stop all of B's interaction pretty much. He's now going to go Branded Fusion, dumping a light for Albion, and this is a play I don't agree with. Player B is in 4,000 life points, and so A probably should have just gone Lubellion, sending Comedy to dodge the Valor, and basically just guarantee game through just about anything, but he chooses to go Albion instead, and he gets Valored. He's going to Adventure to add and discard Enchantress, and then he's going to Enchantress for right, so this is going to out the Mirror Jade with the help of Dracoback in hand. He's going to write, summon a token, and then I believe he's going to equip Dracoback in a couple seconds, and then bounce the Mirror Jade back to extra deck, which will out it without triggering it. He's going to go to battle phase and try to attack, but the Aliber is going to trigger here off the Mirror Jade being returned, so the Aliber is going to kind of body block some damage from player A. A is going to chain his max that he drew for turn to get 1 draw off this Aliber, which is an interesting play. I don't really know if this is the best time to max, but I don't play OCG, so I don't really know the dynamics of max there. He's going to swing for another 25 and miss lethal because of the Aliber float, so don't forget your Aliber float, everyone. It's pretty important here. B now has very few cards. He has Adlib and a top deck of Prosperity, and player A, off the max 1 draw, drew an Ash Blossom, so he's going to Ash this Prosperity here, which is brutal. Very, very fortunate for A. I think if A hadn't drawn Ash, this game could have gone south very quickly. B is going to try to Tragedy now and Grave to reset a Branded Fusion, but I think they forgot that in the previous turn, player A used Called by the Grave on the Tragedy to stop Branded in red. They're going to realize this, and then B is going to scoop because he has no play. So that is game 1. I think there were some errors from player A, but he managed to stick out the win due to the Adventurer Engine and drawing a couple cards off max. In game 2, B is going to open with Foolish, dumping Enchantress. This is a really powerful application of Foolish in this hybrid. You can dump both Tragedy and Enchantress to get access to either engine. So he's going to... Enchantress is going to get ashed, which is forced here. He's going to Prosper 6. I'm going to fast forward a bit. And he's going to excavate, looks like Adventure, Bell, Max, Prosperity, and Aliber. And so he needs his branded cards. He's going to go for Aliber. This is kind of a giveaway that he may not have Adventurer cards. He would have maybe gone for a Max otherwise. But he's going to Aliber here, effect. This will resolve, Branded Fusion. And Ash is already used, so we know this Branded Fusion is going to resolve here. And I think this is standard. He's going to fuse the Albaz from hand, actually. So this is kind of a tell that he only plays 1 Albaz in deck. He's going to fuse Tragedy and then get Lubellion Tragedy. This is pretty standard. 1 Albaz is interesting because I think I've seen some TCG not play 1 Albaz. They've been playing 2. I've even seen 2 and an Ecclesia, or 2 or 3 Albaz. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake up. He's going to do the standard ending of Mirror Jade, Aliber, and a set, and then in the end phase, he's going to Mirror Jade to banish his own Aliber and search. Now, this match is after Dimension Force, so they have branded Exile, the new trap, and that is a card that is going to be legal for YCS Hartford at the end of May. So he's going to set branded in red here instead of Exile. I believe we see that next game, but Exile is definitely a huge card in this mirror. He's actually going to shotgun Brandon Red in the end phase here to add back Tragedy and then fuse Adlib with Mirror Jade for Draco's Depelia. And it's going to Adlib back his Mirror Jade. I'm going to pause again here. This is a play that is not that common for us, but the reason I do this in the OCG is primarily to play around Called by the Grave, because Called by the Grave is at 2 over there. We saw from game 1 that Called by on the target of Brandon Red is such a massive swing in momentum that you really want to prevent it, and so he's going to go for Draco's Depelia here, instead of Chimera, by just activating Brandon Red during his own end phase instead of setting it and waiting for the opponent's turn. In the TCG, you could see this more commonly to play around Crossout Designator. I know a lot of lists are on multiple Crossout now, because it's very, very strong in the mirror. And if you Brandon Red in your own end phase, you will play around their Crossout on your Brandon Red by just not waiting for their turn, so you'll be able to resolve all of this. The downside, of course, is that you have your boss monsters out on the field now, and now you're vulnerable to cards like Dark Ruler and especially Super Poly. So it's going to be definitely your call to make, I think. A is going to Enchantress here for a right. And then he's going to right immediately, summoning a token, getting Fateful Adventure. And then I believe he's going to Adventure immediately, and he's going to add, I think, Enchantress instead of Griffin Rider. I think the reason is because he knows that none of this Adventure stuff is going to stick on the board, and he's going to need to kind of either link climb or just kind of brute force his way through. So he's not going to waste his Griffin here. He's going to go for another Enchantress. He's going to pitch the Tragedy off of Adventure, and he's going to search ad libitum. And then it's going to try to special summon Enchantress. This is to get Draco back, and the Draco back is going to force the Mirror Jade. So the Mirror Jade is going to activate here. It's going to send Albion banishing the token. This is going to permanently out the Draco back for the rest of the game, which is pretty important. And now player A is going to normal summon Albert, not use the effect because he's locked by the adventure cards, and he's going to link summon into Verte Anaconda. And player B is going to activate Draco's Depelia to negate it. And the commentator here in the original video actually pauses for quite a long time, and basically he is saying that he disagrees with this play. I didn't see it here, but if you look earlier in the video, player A does have a Brandon Red in the hand. So there's some debate here about whether it's correct to actually normal summon the Albert here and try to go for Verte, or if you just pass. You know, if you set the Brandon Red, you have your Albert for next turn, and you can do a Guardian Chimera play with your Tragedy Engrave on the opponent's turn, and then you can use Albert on turn 4, I think, on player A's next turn. So the commentator does not agree with the use of Albert here to turn the Verte. I'm generally inclined to agree. I don't think the Verte was the best here. He does have the option of going Verte Effect, send Branded Fusion, and then you can chain Brandon Red to fuse with the Verte and maybe like an Albert in the grave or something. But he doesn't do that here, so he's going to get negated, and I think this is maybe a case of the players forgetting how Draco's Depelia works, because it looks like player B preemptively Draco's Depelia the Verte here. Or maybe that's not the case. It's hard to tell. I don't really speak Japanese, but it looks like the Verte is going to resolve negated, which is really curious because we know that A does have a Brandon Red in the hand. So he's going to set that here. He's going to set his Crossout Designator, and he's going to pass. So this is, I think, definitely not the way that A wanted this turn to work out. So the rest of this game is pretty one-sided, I'm pretty sure. A doesn't have much of a play. He only has Brandon Red. And so B is going to have another right here. It's going to be very, very strong. And this is going to get cross-outed. This is one very strong application of Crossout in the mirror. You just have Crossout for all these power cards like Right, Branded Fusion, and Brandon Red. So B is going to activate Branded Fusion, and A is going to forfeit. He knows that he's way too far behind in card advantage, and that is that. Going off to game 3 here, I believe this is the longest of the 3 games by far. A is going to start off with opening, probably in the draw phase. He's going to get maxed, and he's going to chain Ash Blossom to negate the max. And again, we don't have max in the TCG, and so there's going to be some principles that aren't exactly the same, but I think overall the mirror is going to be pretty similar. He's going to pitch his own max for opening, and he's going to Albert for Branded Fusion, and we are off to the races. We see a Foolish in A's hand, so he's going to Foolish for Enchantress now, which is very, very strong. It's both engines right off the bat. And now instead of going Branded Fusion immediately, or instead of going right immediately, rather. He's going to try to Enchantress, he's going to get belled. Branded Fusion is now going to some Dumb Tragedy and some Rebellion. He's going to pitch the Comedy in hand, so this is strong. This dodges basically all the remaining hand traps now. And he's going to be able to end on a standard Branded Red setup. So let's fast forward through this a bit. He's going to go Mirror Jade, and then most likely banish his own Aliber, yep, and then in the end phase set Branded Red. And like we saw in game 2, he's going to do the same play where he Branded Reds in his own end phase instead of waiting for the opponent's turn, and he's going to summon Draco's Depelia. And again, this is the play around called by our crossout. We'll see if this is as common for us, but I think Chimera is a really, really, really strong card, and so it's usually preferable to try to hold it. We're going to go to player B's turn. He's going to start with a Foolish, which is of course good. He's going to be able to potentially access Adventure, but he chooses Dumb Tragedy instead. He's going to add Comedy off the Tragedy. This is going to dodge Draco's Depelia, and this is, I think, a very strong use case for Comedy, is that it's so important for playing around Draco's Depelia in the mirror. He's going to Branded Fusion now. He's going to go for Rebellion, pitching probably the Comedy in hand. And this will again dodge the Draco's Depelia. This is, I think, a really important use case of this card. He's going to resolve everything, go for Mirror Jade. He's going to activate Mirror Jade effect. His opponent's going to chain his own Mirror Jade. Or rather, sorry, he's going to try to attack Draco's Depelia with Mirror Jade, and then we're going to see both Mirror Jades chained. And then B is going to chain his Comedy when the Draco's Depelia activates. So, chain fully resolves. B is going to banish A's Mirror Jade. A is going to banish B's Comedy. And now the battle phase is going to cease because there's no point crashing your Aliber. And he's going to set Branded Exile in the end phase. This is an extremely powerful trap in Dimension Force that is kind of like Super Poly plus Monster Reborn at the same time. A is going to grab Branded Red off of his Albion. And B has grabbed Exile. There's an error here also. I think A's Raigeki effect was triggered off Mirror Jade being outed, but A's Mirror Jade was not fusion summoned. It was summoned back by Adlib. So this warning at the bottom here is saying that they played this incorrectly. But that's why I chose this replay. There are some mistakes here that I think are really good educational opportunities. Now A is going to start with summoning Tragedy. This is going to try to go for Relinquished Anima and then use Branded Red to set up a follow-up play here. And he's going to get max on a normal summon. They are now in time, by the way, so there's some of the reason behind this lineup play is that he's trying to push for as much damage as possible. But I think summoning Tragedy was a critical mistake here because B is going to flip his Exile. And now we're going to see this card in action. This card is going to be at YCS Hartford, so be very, very, aware of what this card does. Exile is going to summon back Mirror Jade from his own graveyard, and is going to fuse with both of his opponent's monsters for a Masquerade. And even though the Tragedy can trigger here, everything gets banished, and I think it's little compensation for both of the monsters you just lost. And now you're facing down a Masquerade in time, and you have no battle phase this turn because your monsters got wiped. So I think summoning the Tragedy was just, there's no reason to do that here. It was a huge mistake. B is going to activate Fateful. It's going to grab Enchantress and then pitch it and grab Right. Another strength of Adventure that we've been seeing in this match is that it pushes so much damage so quickly. And in matches like these, where the matches go pretty long and are pretty grindy, having extra damage can be important in time pressure as well. He's going to go Draco back on the token and force at the back row, which I believe is a Branded Red. Yes. So A is bleeding 600 life points every time he plays a card. In time, that is not a fun thing to have. He's going to fuse with his own Albaz for Rebellion. And then I believe he's going to pitch his last card in hand, which looks like an Aliber for Rebellion's effect. He's going to summon his own Mirror Jade here. Really is kind of just, I think, a desperate play. He's trying to hold on and just, he needs some miracle to push out enough damage to win in time next turn. B is going to use his own Mirror Jade. A is going to chain his own. We're going to banish B's Mirror Jade, and then B is going to banish A's Rebellion, probably to dodge the Raigeki effect somehow. A's Alibur is going to trigger. This is going to negate the Masquerade, but the Masquerade has already dealt 3,000 points of damage at this point. And then the real deal breaker here is that B is going to use Tragedy to set Exile. And that is the nail in the coffin. B is going to grab Brandon Red, and now with Exile plus the Brandon Red and the Masquerade back online, this is going to be really devastating for A to play through. We're going to go back to A here. He's going to draw, I think, Draco back. And he's going to try to link off for Dark. And then activate Journey. And Dark is going to try to probably grab his opponent's Alibur, but B is going to activate his own Brandon Red, targeting the Alibur to add it back. And I think that is going to be the end of the match. Yeah, A is going to try to activate Adventure here, and that's not going to amount to anything, and so he's going to forfeit. So that is going to be the end of this match. I think pretty interesting back and forth. Definitely some nuances of the mirror match that were not explored in this video, but I think it's a good example of just like the cards in the mirror are interesting because they don't really interact with each other that much. The removal is not that impactful in the mirror, and it's really about tempo and who is able to out-resource the opponent. Next week, I think I'll be uploading a commentary of a match I played, also an Adventurer mirror, and after that, I'm not super clear what I'm going to do for videos in this channel. I might do some agent videos, because those cards are now in Ghost from the Past, and I'm pretty excited about that deck. Definitely not as serious of a deck as Despia, but if there's interest in that, I'll do some videos in that. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe. Check out our sponsors, Cardmarket, and our Ultimate Guard link. Until then, I will see you next time. Peace.